Welcome back to the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast, a weekly podcast where we look at the history and development of video games across all of time. I'm your host, RxDude22. This is season 2 of the podcast where we're looking at the games being used in the Retro Gaming League. It's a friendly competition on Facebook where gaming pages come together and compete against each other in different retro games each and every week. This is also episode 14 of the podcast. The game this week speaks volumes for the N64 system. It really revolutionized the 3D genre of games. And of course, it stars our favorite Italian plumber, Mario. That's right, my friends. We're looking at Super Mario 64 this week. Here's what we got for you. Super Mario 64 is a platform game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64. It was released in Japan and North America in 1996 and PAL regions in 1997. It is the first Super Mario game to feature 3D gameplay, combining traditional Super Mario gameplay, visual style, and characters in a large open world. In the game, Bowser, the primary antagonist of the Super Mario franchise, invades Princess Peach's castle and hides the castle's sources of protection, the Power Stars, in many different worlds inside magical paintings. As Mario, the player collects Power Stars to unlock enough of Princess Peach's castle to get to Bowser and rescue Princess Peach. Director Shigeru Miyamoto conceived a 3D Super Mario game during the production of Star Fox in 1993. Development lasted nearly 3 years, about 1 year on design and 20 months on production, starting with designing the virtual camera system. The team continued with illustrating the 3D character models, at the time a relatively unattempted task, and refining sprite movements. The sound effects were recorded by Yoji Inaka, and the score was composed by Koji Kondo. Super Mario 64 was highly anticipated by video game journalists and audiences, boosted by advertising campaigns and showings at the 1996 E3 trade show. It received critical acclaim, with reviewers praising its ambition, visuals, level design, and gameplay, though some criticize its virtual camera system. It is the best-selling Nintendo 64 game, with nearly 12 million copies sold by 2015. Retrospectively, Super Mario 64 has been considered one of the greatest video games of all time. Numerous developers have cited it as an influence on 3D platform games, with its dynamic camera system and 360-degree analog control, establishing a new archetype for the genre, much as Super Mario Bros. Did for side-scrolling platform games. It was remade as Super Mario 64 DS for the Nintendo DS in 2004, and has been ported to other Nintendo consoles since. The game has attracted a cult following, spawning many fan games and mods, a large speedrunning presence, and enduring rumors surrounding game features. Gameplay. Super Mario 64 is a 3D platformer in which the player controls Mario through various courses. Mario's abilities are far more diverse than in previous games. He can walk, run, jump, crouch, crawl, climb, swim, kick, grab objects, and punch using the game controller's analog stick and buttons. He can execute special jumps by combining a regular jump with other actions, including the double and triple jumps, long jump, backflip, and wall jump. The player can adjust the camera, operated by Lakitu broadcasting Mario, and toggle between first-person and third-person view. Health, lives, and power-ups. Unlike many of its predecessors, Super Mario 64 uses a health point system, represented by a pie shape consisting of 8 segments. If Mario has taken damage, he can replenish his health by either collecting 3 types of coins: yellow, which replenishes 1 segment, red, equal to 2 yellow coins, and blue, equal to 5 yellow coins, or by walking through a spinning heart. Underwater, Mario's health instead represents how long he can hold his breath, slowly diminishing while underwater and replenishing when he surfaces. As in previous Super Mario games, he starts with a number of extra lives, lost when his health is depleted or he falls into a bottomless pit. The game ends if Mario loses all his lives. When Mario finishes a course, he gains a life for every 50 yellow coins the player collected. And extra mushrooms are hidden in various places such as trees, and may chase Mario through the air or fall to the ground and disappear shortly if not collected. In absence of power-ups normally found in previous games, such as the Super Mushroom and Fire Flower, 3 colors of translucent blocks, red, green, and blue, appear throughout many stages. These switches of the same colors can be found in secret areas that turn their corresponding blocks solid and allow Mario to obtain 3 types of special cap power-ups. The wing cap allows Mario to fly after doing a triple jump or being shot from a cannon. The metal cap makes him immune to enemies, fire, noxious gases, allows him to withstand wind and water currents, perform on-land moves underwater, and have unlimited air capacity underwater. And the vanish cap renders him partially immaterial and invulnerable, and allows him to walk through some obstacles. A shell remains after stomping a Koopa Troopa, which Mario can use to surf on water, lava, and quicksand. Setting an objective. The hub world takes place in Princess Peach's castle, which consists of 3 floors, a tower, and a basement, plus a moat and a courtyard outside the castle. The player's main objective is to look for paintings that bring them to courses containing power stars, which upon their collection unlock more of the castle hub world. Each of the 15 courses has 7 power stars, and an additional 15 are hidden as secrets and as bonuses, for a total of 120 power stars in the game. The courses are filled with enemies as well as friendly creatures that provide assistance or ask favors, such as Bob-omb Buddies, who will allow Mario to access cannon on request. Some power stars only appear after completing certain tasks, often hinted at by the name of the course. These challenges include collecting 100 yellow coins or 8 red coins on a stage, defeating a boss, racing an opponent, and solving puzzles. The final level of the game is blocked by endless stairs, but Mario can bypass them by collecting 70 power stars. There are many hidden mini-courses and other secrets within the castle, which may contain extra power stars required for the full completion of the game. If the player returns to the game after collecting all 120 power stars, Yoshi can be found on the roof of Princess Peach's castle, who will give the player a message from the developers, accompanied by 100 extra lives and an improved triple jump. Plot of the game. The game begins with a letter from Princess Peach inviting Mario to come to her castle for a cake she has baked for him. When he arrives, Mario discovers that Bowser has invaded the castle and imprisoned the princess and her servants within its walls, using the power of the castle's 120 power stars. The power stars are hidden in the castle's paintings, which serve as portals to other worlds, where Bowser's minions keep watch over the stars. Mario explores the castle and enters these worlds, gaining access to more rooms as he recovers more stars. Mario unlocks 2 doors to different floors of the castle with keys obtained by defeating Bowser in hidden worlds. After getting at least 70 of the 120 power stars, Mario breaks the curse of the endless stairs that block the entrance to Bowser's final hiding place. After Mario defeats Bowser in the final battle and Bowser escapes, swearing revenge, he obtains a special power star, which gives him the wing cap, and he flies back to the castle's courtyard. Peach is released from the stained glass window above the castle's entrance, and she rewards Mario by kissing him on the nose and baking the cake she had promised him. Development. In the early 1990s, Super Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto conceived a 3D Mario design while developing the game Star Fox in 1993 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Star Fox used the Super FX graphics chip, which added more processing power. Miyamoto considered using the chip to develop a Super NES game, Super Mario FX, with gameplay based on an entire world in miniature-like miniature trains. According to engineer Dylan Cuthbert, who worked on Star Fox, Super Mario FX was never the title of a game, but was the codename of the Super FX chip itself. Miyamoto reformulated the idea for the Nintendo 64, not for its greater power, but because its controller has more buttons for gameplay. At the January 1993 Consumer Electronics Expo show, CES, where Star Fox was made its debut, Nintendo's booth demonstrated a talking 3D polygon animation of Mario's head. It returned in the start screen, programmed by Giles Goddard. A production of Super Mario 64 began on September 7, 1994 at Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Division, and concluded on May 20, 1996. According to Miyamoto, the development consisted of around 15 to 20 people. Development began with the characters and the camera system. Months were spent selecting a view and layout. The original concept involved the fixed path of an isometric game such as Super Mario RPG, which moved to a free-roaming 3D design, with some linear paths, particular to coerce the player into Bowser's lair, according to Giles Goddard. Super Mario 64 is one of the first games for which Nintendo produced its illustrations internally instead of by outsourcing. The graphics were made using N-World, a Silicon Graphics SGI-based toolkit. The development team prioritized Mario's movement and, before levels were created, tested and refined Mario's animations on a simple grid. The 3D illustrations were created by Shigefumi Hino, Hasashi Nagami, Hideki Fuji, Tomoko Kuromi, and Yusuke Nakana, and the game was animated by co-director Yoshiaki Kozumi and Satoru Takawaza. Yoichi Kotabe, illustrator and character design for the Mario series, made a 3D drawing of Mario from various angles and directed the creation of the character models. In an interview with the Washington Post, Yoshiaki Kozumi recalled that his challenge was animating the 3D models without any precedence. To assist players with depth perception, the team positioned a faux shadow directly beneath each object regardless of the area's lighting. Yoshiaki Kozumi described the feature as an ironclad necessity, which might not be realistic, but it's made much easier to play. Miyamoto's guiding design philosophy was to include more details than earlier games by using Nintendo 64's power to feature all the emotions of the characters. He likened the game's style to a 3D interactive cartoon. Some details were inspired by the developers' personal lives. For example, the boos are based on assistant director Takashi Tezuka's wife, who, as Miyamoto explained, is very quiet normally, but one day she exploded, maddened by all the time Tezuka spent at work. Super Mario 64 was first run on an SGI Onyx emulator, which only emulated the console's application programming interface and not its hardware. The first test scenario for controls and physics involved Mario interacting with a golden rabbit named MIPS, after Nintendo 64's MIPS architecture processors. The rabbit was included in the final game as a Power Star holder. Super Mario 64 features more puzzles than earlier Mario games. It was developed simultaneously with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, but as Ocarina of Time was released more than 2 years later, some puzzles were taken for Super Mario 64. The developers tried to include a multiplayer cooperative mode whereby players would control Mario and his brother Luigi in split screen, but could not make it work satisfactorily. The music was composed by veteran composer Koji Kondo, who created new interpretations of the familiar melodies from earlier media as well as new material. Yoji Inakaga was responsible for the sound design, tasked with producing hundreds of sound effects. He and Kondo felt the music and sound effects were equally important. According to Inakaga, the average Nintendo 64 game had about 500 sound effects, and made comparisons to Ocarina of Time with 1,200 and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask with 2,000. Super Mario 64 is one of the first games to feature Charles Martinet as the voice of Mario, and Leslie Swan, then senior editor of Nintendo Power and English localizer for Super Mario 64, as the voice of Princess Peach. Release: Super Mario 64 was first shown as a playable prototype in November 1995 Nintendo Space World. This version was only 50% complete, and only about 2% of texture mapping was finished. It featured 32 courses. Miyamoto had hoped to create more, possibly up to 40, but was ultimately reduced to 15. According to Nintendo of America chairman Howard Lincoln, Miyamoto's desire to add more was a major factor in the decision to delay the Nintendo 64 release from Christmas 1995 to summer 1996. Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamaguchi later said, "Game creators can finish games quickly if they compromise, but users have sharp eyes. They soon know if the games are compromised. Miyamoto asked for 2 more months and I gave them to him unconditionally." The game was later shown at E3 1996 with multiple Nintendo 64s set up for people to play. According to Giles Goddard, the stress of the project caused some programmers to quit or move to different departments. Advertising and sales. Peter Main, Nintendo's vice president of marketing at the time, stated Super Mario 64 was meant as the killer app for the Nintendo 64. The $20 million marketing campaign, including videotapes sent to more than 500,000 Nintendo Power subscribers and advertisements shown on MTV, Fox, and Nickelodeon. Super Mario 64 was officially released in Japan in June of 1996, North America in September, and in Europe and Australia in March of 1997. During its first 3 months of sales in North America, it sold more than 2 million copies and grossed $140 million in the United States, becoming the best-selling video game of 1996. It was also the best-selling game overall from 1995 to 2002. During the first 3 months of 1997, it was the second best-selling console at 523,000 units. By early 2001, it had sold 5.5 million units and 5.9 million units by September of 2002. At the 1999 Malia Festival in Cannes, Super Mario 64 won a gold ECCSEL prize for earning revenues above 21 million lira in the European Union in 1998. It became the second most popular game on Wii's Virtual Console by June 2007, behind Super Mario Bros. By March 2008, Super Mario 64 sold 11.8 million copies worldwide, being the best-selling Nintendo 64 game. By 2015, Super Mario 64 was the 12th most sold Mario game, with 11.91 million copies sold. Re-release. An enhanced remake, Super Mario 64 DS, was released for the Nintendo DS in 2004. As with the original, the plot centers on collecting Power Stars and rescuing Princess Peach from Bowser. In contrast with the original, Yoshi is the starting character, with Mario, Luigi, and Wario as unlockable characters. It features improved graphics, slightly altered courses, new areas, power-ups and enemies, more Power Stars to collect, touchscreen minigames, and a multiplayer mode. Reviews were mostly positive, but critics praising the graphics and add-ons to the original game, but criticizing the controls in multiplayer mode. By September 2021, 11.606 million copies had been sold worldwide. Other re-releases. A version of Super Mario 64 was used as a tech demo for the Nintendo 64 disk drive, floppy drive at the 1996 Nintendo Space World Trade Show. Like Wave Race 64, Super Mario 64 was re-released in Japan on July 18, 1997, as Super Mario 64 Shindo Pack Thai version, which featured various bugs, added support for the Rumble Pack peripheral, including the voice acting from the English version, among other changes. In November 2003, it was ported to China's iQIYI player as a limited release demo. In late 2006, it was released on the Wii Virtual Console service, which added enhanced resolution and compatibility with the GameCube and Super Famicom Classic controllers. In September 2020, Super Mario 64 was one of the 3 Super Mario games to be included in the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection on Nintendo Switch. It made another Nintendo Switch appearance in October 2021 as part of the Nintendo 64 lineup for the Nintendo Switch Online and Expansion Pack. Reception. Critical reviews. Super Mario 64 received enthusiastic pre-release reception. GamePro commented on the 1995 prototype smoothness and how the action was a blast despite the game being only 50% complete at the time. Ed Samrad of Electronic Gaming Monthly agreed, praising the new 3D animation of Mario characters shown in only 2D before. Larry Marcus, a source analyst for Alex Brown and Sons, recalls Super Mario 64 being the most anticipated game of E3 1996, remembered a field of teenagers jostling for a test run. Super Mario 64 received critical acclaim with a score of 94 out of 100 from review aggregator Metacritic, based on 13 reviews, and a score of 96% from review aggregator Game Rankings, which ranked it the 18th best video game of all time based on 22 reviews. The design, variety of controls, and use of 3D gameplay received praise from video game publications. Maximum found its strongest points were the sense of freedom and its replayability, comparing it to Super Mario World and citing its similar gimmick of allowing access to new areas upon finding switches. One of Game Fan's 4 reviews, E. Storm, cited the water levels as overjoying and showed how Super Mario 64 delved into an entirely new realm of gaming. Official Nintendo magazine called it beautiful in both looks and design. Doug Perry of IGN agreed that it transitioned the series to 3D perfectly. Electronic Gaming Monthly discussed the levels in their initial review, praising them for their size and challenge, and later ranked it the 4th best console game of all time, arguing that it had breached the entire genre of 3D gaming while working with virtually flawlessly. Computer and video games editor Paul Davies praised the 3D environment. and said that it enhanced the interaction and described the control scheme as intuitive and versatile. Total hailed the gameplay as being so imaginative and having such variety that the reviewers were still hooked after 1 month. Writing for Allgame, Jonty Davies commented on the diversity of the gameplay and the abundance of activities found in each course. Nintendo Life's Corby Dillard agreed, calling the variety the game's greatest genius. Writing for Game Revolution, Nobujoso Radakovich described Super Mario 64 as one of the new, true 3D platform games. N64 magazine likened it to an enormous playground which was a pleasure to experiment in, but opinion that the exploration element was slightly brought down by how many hints and tips there were. Victor Lucas of EP Daily agreed, praising the freedom but suggesting players skip all the signposts. Super Mario 64 also received praise for its graphics. GameSpot praised the graphics for being clean yet simple and not detracting from the details of the game world. GamePro particularly praised the combination of unprecedented technical performance and art design, calling it the most visual impressive game of all time. Paul Davies described the graphics as so amazing to see, you find yourself stopping to admire them. Jonta Davies called the visuals phenomenal and the frame rate respectable. Doug Perry found the graphics simple but magnificent, a sentiment shared by Next Generation. Hyper reviewer Nino Aguilaperos called it the best looking console game to date, an opinion that its high resolution frame rate for the time made it look infinity better than a cartoon. Total said the graphics' lack of pixelation and jagged edges made it look like they were from a top-of-the-range graphics workstation. The camera system received mixed reviews. Next Generation found that Super Mario 64 was less accessible than previous Mario games, frustrated by the camera's occasional erratic movements and lack of optimal range. Nobuoka Radakovich and Doug Perry added that the camera was sometimes blocked by or went through objects. Electronic Gaming Monthly's Dan So, Sean Smith, and Crispin Boyer all removed half a point from their scores, claiming that the camera sometimes could not move to a wanted angle or rapidly shift in an undesirable manner. A criticism that returned in Electronic Gaming Monthly's 100 Best Games of All Time list. Game Informer stated in their 2007 re-review by present-day standards, the camera would almost be considered broken. Nintendo Power also noted that the learning curve of the shifting camera. In contrast, Corby Dillard claimed that the camera did not have any problems and that it succeeded by helping the players traverse complex environments. This sentiment was shared by Total, claiming that there were a few occasions where the camera was at a suboptimal angle. Paul Davies acknowledged that he was critical of the camera, saying that in some occasions it was difficult to position ideally, but ultimately dismissed it as one hiccup of a revolutionary game. Legacy. Super Mario 64 was key to the early success of and anticipation for the Nintendo 64. Lee Hutchinson, a former Babbage's employee, remember that store? Notes how the game was spurred by a feverish video game press and how the success of the game defied the rule that a wide variety of launch games was necessary for broad appeal. Eventually, the Nintendo 64 lost much of its market share to Sony's PlayStation, partly due to its cartridge and controller design decisions, which were reportedly implemented by Miyamoto for Super Mario 64. In 2012, Super Mario 64 was among the 80 entries in the Smithsonian American Art Museum's The Art of Video Games exhibit. Influence. Super Mario 64 set many precedents for 3D platformers as one of the most influential video games. The game is known for its non-linear open freedom, which has been acclaimed by video game developers and journalists. OneUp.com wrote about its central hub world, which provides a safe tutorial and a level selector, and is now a staple of the 3D platform genre. As the genre evolved, many of the series' conventions were rethought drastically, placing emphasis on exploration over traditional platform jumping, or hop and bop action. Though some disputed its quality, others argued that it established an entirely new genre for the series. Its mission-based level design inspired game designers such as GoldenEye 007, producer and director Martin Hollis, and the development team of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Dan Houser, a prominent figure in the development of the Grand Theft Auto series, stated, Anyone who makes 3D games who says they're not borrowed something from Mario or Zelda for the Nintendo 64 is lying. Square Enix has stated that a coincidental meeting with Disney employees resulted in the creation of Kingdom of the Heart series, inspired by Super Mario 64's use of 3D environments and exploration. Chris Sutherland, who served as the lead designer for Banjo-Kazooie, agreed that Super Mario 64 set the benchmark for 3D platformers and claimed that any other game in the genre on the Nintendo 64 would inevitably be compared with the Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 introduced a free-floating camera that can be controlled independently of the character. To increase freedom of exploration and fluid control in a 3D world, Super Mario 64 designers created a dynamic virtual video camera that turns and accelerates according to the character's actions. This game system became the standard for 3D platformers. Nintendo Power praised the game's camera movements along with the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time's edition of the lock-on camera, and concluded that the two games were trailblazers for the 3D era. PC Magazine's Kay Thor Jensen considers Super Mario 64 to be the first truly realized 3D platformer, with the integration of camera control into its core gameplay, which he called the medium's true evolutionary leap. Super Mario 64's use of the analog stick was novel, offering more precise and wide-ranging character movements than the digital D-pads of other consoles. At the time, 3D games were generally only allowed the player to either control the character in relation to a fixed camera angle or in relation to the character's perspective. Super Mario 64's controls, in contrast, are fully analog and interpret a 360-degree range of motion into navigating through a 3D space relative to the camera. The analog stick allows for precise control over subtleties such as running speed. In 2005, Electronic Gaming Monthly ranked Super Mario 64 the most important game since they began publication in 1989, stating that while there were 3D games before it, Nintendo's was the first to get the control scheme right. In July 2021, a pristine sealed copy of Super Mario 64 was auctioned for $1.56 million, the largest amount ever paid for a video game. Heritage Auctions video game specialist said, "It seems impossible to overstate the importance of this title, not only to the history of Mario and Nintendo, but to the video games as a whole." Successors. A sequel is planned for the disc-driven add-on under the codename Super Mario 128. In July 1996, Nintendo insiders stated that Miyamoto was assembling a team consisting mostly of developers who had worked on Super Mario 64. Miyamoto affirmed that work on the sequel had only commenced at the time of E3 1997 convention. The project was cancelled due to its lack of progress and the commercial failure of the Nintendo 64 disk drive. Super Mario 64 successors include Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube and Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii, building on its core design of power-ups and its 3D open-ended gameplay. Super Mario Galaxy 2 includes a remake of Super Mario 64's Swamp Fortress level called Throwback Galaxy. Super Mario 3D Land and Super Mario 3D World are departures from the open-ended design, instead focused on platforming reminiscent of 2D games. The Nintendo Switch game Super Mario Odyssey returns to Super Mario 64's open design. It includes numerous references to the latter. The Mario 64 suit and Mario 64 cap, which change Mario's appearance to his in Super Mario 64, can be purchased after completing the main storyline. Additionally, Mario can travel to the Mushroom Kingdom, which include Princess Peach's castle and its courtyard. The kingdom's power moons resemble Super Mario 64's power stars. All the information here was provided by Wikipedia. And that'll bring episode 14 of the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast to its conclusion. This week we looked at the iconic Super Mario 64. Next week's game for the Retro Gaming League is another N64 juggernaut. We'll be looking at GoldenEye 64. If you can't watch the podcast here on YouTube, you can check it out on other listening platforms as well, such as Spotify. It releases on the same day. We have other content on YouTube as well, including gameplay videos. You can also catch live streams of us on Twitch most mornings at twitch.tv/Classic and Current Gaming. It's been RxDude22 from the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast signing out. Keep on gaming. See you on the next stream. Be good to each other. And hear me next week on the next week's podcast. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening and take care.